Alright, so hey guys, it's Marcus from Outdoors Canada, and today I'm back in another kitchen recipe video. So last time I did how to make kombucha, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a very simple survival ration food called hardtack. So here we go. Alright, so what you're going to need for this is a pan. Next, you're going to need a small cutting board. It can be a big or small, it doesn't matter. You're also going to need a measuring cup with some water, a bowl to mix everything in, and some plain white flour. Alright, so first what you want to do is grab your bowl. Mine's not too big because I'm not going to be making a lot of hardtack. Next, what you want to do is grab your plain white flour. Now in mine I have a little spoon for measuring out. I don't know how big it is, and because I'm just going to be doing this by eye, it does not need to be exact measurements. So add your first scoop of flour into your bowl, then grab some water, pour some in. Now don't do too much because you don't want it to be too wet. It's going to be a dry dough, as we will see later. Then what you want to do, grab a spoon and just mix it up. It doesn't need to be mixed that well, it doesn't really matter. You just really want to get that dough all wet, so all covered, so it can start to absorb that water. It's going to look a bit like pancake batter. Now there is some lumps in there and you can keep on going. It doesn't really matter. So then what you want to do is, get your flour and add another scoop. It doesn't matter if you're going to get messy with this. You're going to get your hands doughy eventually because you're going to be mixing this by hand. So add that flour, and start mixing it, and it's going to start to form a very wet, sticky dough. We're going to need to add more flour eventually, but do not add more water throughout this tutorial because you want it to stay very dry. If it's wet, it'll cause problems with baking. So add some more flour. You can just keep adding however much you feel is necessary. So now that it's relatively mixed, you can start doing it by hand. So you're going to get messy doing this. As you can see, it's sticking to my hands, but it'll come off once it gets dried by flour. So let's get mixing this. Alright, so there's our finished dough. You can see it's not really wet anymore. There's a little bit of cracking form. It's still a little moist. You don't want it to be falling apart because of how dry. So it's kind of a flat patty right now. So then grab your cutting board or any flat surface. Now you'd preferably want to have a rolling pin. I do not have one, so I'm just gonna flatten it out with my hands and use my bowl just to flatten it out. So grab your bowl or whatever, flatten it out. Now you don't want it to be too flat. You want there to be about maybe ½ an inch thick. Not too thick, but not too thin, or else it'll burn in the oven. So then what you want to do is grab a pizza cutter. After this, I forgot to mention, you will need one. And you want to just cut it into squares. So the middle portion you can keep as squares. Now it does not need to be a square, but that just looks more aesthetically pleasing. and it'll make it easier for putting the holes. So I have 2 strips there, and I can just put those off to the side and mix up my dough again and make some more squares. So you can just keep mixing it up. If it's too dry, it'll be hard to mix, so just flatten it out and cut it into the squares. Alright, so there we go. We have 2 more, and you can just mix that up. And for the sake of time, I am just going to keep it as one piece, so I don't need to make a square. So I'll just flatten it out, and that's good enough. It's not like fine baking. So then what you want to do is get your squares and your strips, cut them into squares. They don't need to be even size, it really doesn't matter. Also, while you're doing this, you want to preheat your oven to 150 to 175. Alright, now we are on to the hole stage. So you have your squares all lined up, or all on your cutting board. I'm just going to flatten them out a bit more. But you don't want them too thin, remember, or they will burn. So you're also going to need a fork for this. I forgot to mention that as well. So what you want to do is just grab a piece of hardtack and get your fork and just poke holes along the piece of dough. Now it doesn't need to be perfect, so here we go. I'll show you what it looks like. Now the holes are simply just so that the air can easily vent through it a bit better, because they will kind of puff up a bit because of the air inside. So you want to go ahead and do this for all of your squares. Alright, so now that you have all your holes done, so there's what it looks like, you can just go ahead and put them on your cutting board or in your pan, it doesn't matter, we'll be doing that in a sec. So you have them all there, they don't look perfect, so that's fine. Grab your pan. Now if you made the dough properly, then they should just easily go on and they shouldn't stick to your hands. So they don't need to be spaced out too much because they're not going to expand, they don't stick. They're not like cookies. So like I said, if you made your dough properly, you should just be able to take it off easily and it won't stick. If it does stick, you need to add more flour because it's not dry enough. So that's what it looks like. They have holes. They're starting to look like hardtack. So now what you want to do is, so there's another look again at what it looks like. Alright, so next we'll be putting it in the oven. Alright, so we have our pan here, and I'm just going to go ahead and put it in the oven. So there we go, at 375 or 350. And now we're going to leave that for 30 minutes. Alright, so after 30 minutes on one side, what you're going to want to go ahead and do is grab a pair of tongs, or you can take it out if you want, and you just want to flip each piece of hardtack so that each side can cook evenly. So I just got some tongs, I'm just going to flip them in the oven. Alright, so after the 30 minutes was up, I took it out of the oven. You can see that, here, I'll get up close. You can see that it's browned in color, but it's not burned, which is very good. So this is it. This is hardtack. Now,
it may not look very appetizing. You might hear it cracking. Now, what you would want to preferably do if you're going to use this later on is go ahead and dry it for maybe a week or two, just so that all that moisture gets out, because there still might be some softness left if you're lucky. So you dry that out in maybe a plastic bag or a vacuum sealed container, and that's it. So you wouldn't be able to just eat it like that. You'd want to mix it maybe with some coffee or tea or maybe some bacon grease. Now, I'll link it in the description, but I'm going to give you some history, or a brief history about hardtack. So, because it goes back to the early 1100s, I think, in the Crusades, was the first recorded use of this exact same survival food. So that's pretty much it. So I can just show you. I can get two here. They're pretty hard. Let's see, what else could I... Look, I'll just bang it. Not sure if you can hear that, but it's unharmed. So this stuff can last up to 50 years if it's kept dry. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Here we go. I'm going to go ahead and store this in a bag, and I can use it for my next camping or fishing trip. So it's a great ration food if you really need it to survive. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll be back with a lot more videos. I got a new camera. I can talk about that in another video. So yeah, hope you enjoyed on how to make hardtack, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.